Okay, in this lesson we're going to get started with modeling the arms, and I'm going to do that by coming over here to my side view. And here I drew in what's going to be the arm socket, and it's a little bit larger than the actual arm itself. And what I'm going to do is look for 4 faces around this area, which looks to be like these 4 faces right here, probably the closest ones. These are kind of a little too far back on the character. It looks like I might have to put in one more edge loop here to just make that work, and I sort of need it down here as well. I need a little bit more shape down here. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'll just drop in an edge loop here and bring it back like that. Hit Q to get out of it. I'm going to double click on this edge loop here because I want to kind of shift it back a little bit. I want to make sure I've got my edge slide on, and just use the move tool and slide that back. Alright, and down here I'm just going to kind of quickly come in here and just pull these down. I do need to take edge slide off now and pull that down and back like that. Okay. Alright, so I've got these 4 faces right here that are around the general area of my character's arm. I'm going to just check out the front view here. And so his arms are sitting a little high. I might push them down just a little bit here and take these lower. Go back to the side view here. This is starting to get up a little high, so I think I'm going to grab these 4 right here and just shift them up a little bit. So again, I'm going to kind of double click on this edge right here and deselect these ones in the back, and over here keep my edge slide on, and I'm just going to kind of pull these up just a little bit here and pull this up as well. I think that's actually going to help the back out here a little bit. Yeah, we've got some nice curvature along the back here. And I'm going to do the same thing here where I take these and push them down just a little bit. Same thing here and here. And then I'm going to just drop in one more edge loop that goes kind of right down the middle here. Okay, so that looks a little bit more reasonable here for the, my character has pretty narrow arms, as you can see. They're very narrow at the top and then they widen at the bottom. If I had a character that had larger arms up at the top, I would have left, I probably would have used those other faces to shape it. But since I have a pretty narrow starting point here, I want to work with some smaller size faces just so I'm not pulling these points around too far. So I'm going to hit Q to get out of that, and I'm going to go to Vertex. And just to kind of highlight these areas right here, I'm going to use these 4 faces. So I want, I don't want to just use one and extrude out. That's not going to give me enough edges on an arm that I can kind of shape it and connect it with a hand. So at minimum, I want to see 4 faces here. If I had a character with really large arms, I might take that up to 6 or even a little larger than that. But for my character, I think this is adequate for the starting point of the arms here. So again, I'm going to go back to Vertices and W on the keyboard, and I've got the slide, edge slide on. And I'm pulling these outer points in and around and just starting to make a opening that looks more like the circle I have drawn here. So the base of the arm. Okay, and I'm making it intentionally larger. I'm also starting to move it down a little bit. I feel like I drew this and it's sitting up a little bit too high. So I'm just kind of eyeballing it here and just dropping it down a little bit. This is going to be my center point right here. And actually I'm going to open these up just a little bit more. So I want a wider opening than the actual arm size itself. And that has to do with just sort of preparing the geometry around the opening of the arm socket here, so that when it's rigged and starts animating, that it's going to deform properly. Okay, so if I were to just start right at the arm and come straight out from there, once the character either raises its arm up or lowers it down or is doing just a walk even, you would see all sorts of kind of pinching happening around that arm. Okay, so I want to make a wider opening, and this is actually the area kind of leading into the arm socket area. Okay, so something like that. I've got kind of a circular opening here now. Pull this one back just a little more. Push that one over. Okay, so that looks pretty good right there. And what I'm going to do now, just adjust that one a little bit more. I'm going to actually come in here and highlight these faces. They were actually already highlighted from my previous selection. It remembers that in Maya. And I'm going to delete them. Okay, so it's going to open up the arm here. It actually did it on the other side because I've got symmetry on, and that's fine. I'm actually going to turn this off for the extruding part here. So there's a number of different ways I can do this, but what I first want to do here is to create the area that's going to be around the opening of the arm itself by selecting these edges. So I just double clicked on the edges, and I'm going to do Control E. That's the shortcut for extrude, which is right here on the shelf. It's also under Edit Mesh, Extrude. Okay, so I've done that, and we've got a little toggle right here. If you haven't done extrudes before, it kind of works in two modes right here. We've got kind of a local translation happening here on the edge here. If I click it here, it's going to center around that area, which is what I want. I want it to be uniform, and what I'm going to do is just pull this out a little bit, and then I'm going to click on one of these boxes here, and you can see that that activated the scale tool in the center. So now I'm going to bring this down actually a little bit smaller. The opening of my character is actually smaller than what I drew right here. And you can see now that we've got this area around here, this edge flow happening that's leading into the opening of the arm itself. Okay, and that's what we want. We're probably going to come back here and draw an additional loop around this arm here after we're done extruding. But what I want to do right now is come over to my front view, and I can see I'm just a little lower than the actual drawing that I've done, and I can hit Q to get out of this. I feel like this, when I look at the character, I feel like this is the right place for the arm to sit on it. This feels just a little high, kind of like he's shrugging his shoulders here. So I'm going to go with this. It's going to just be a little off from the drawing. So I'm going to use the drawing more as a guide here and not an exact blueprint. Okay, so I've just double clicked on this edge here. I'm going to extrude again, and I'm going to click this to go to the center. And I'm going to start pulling this out. And if I were modeling a character that had its arms straight out, this would be a lot easier. We'd just bring it out here and do some shaping on it. And this is typically what you would do if you were going to rig this character. I'm not going to rig this character in this particular series. I'm just setting it up more for kind of proof of concept and character design and doing a turntable animation with it. Okay, so one of the things I want to correct on it first is just kind of this edge flow that's happening. I can see it's a little shorter in the front and sticking out here in the back. So I'm just going to grab the X scale, drag it to the center, and you can see that's flattened it out right there. Okay, and then I'm going to leave it right about there, and actually I'm going to go ahead and kind of push it back here and scale it down just a little bit overall. So I've got my edge slide on, so it's not going to scale if I have edge slide on. It's not going to change the form there. So I'm going to make it just a little smaller, and actually this one I'm going to scale up just a little more. Okay, so I've got just a little bit more of a lead-in happening right here for the transition, which is kind of the shoulder area. And now there's a number of different ways I can go about doing this. I can take my time and kind of extrude each section down here and scale and rotate it into place. What I'm going to do is double click on this edge again here, and under my extrude tool I'm going to double click that to open up the options for it. And under here where we can create a curve, I'm going to say generate, and I'm going to give it about, let's go ahead and give it like let's give it 3 divisions right here. Okay, and then I'm going to say extrude. And what that's done is it's created a curve, and this curve is going to allow me to kind of shape it out the way I want it. I'm going to go ahead and do this and center it. And from here, I actually want to grab the curve. It's this little dark area, this little dark line right here is actually the curve for it. So if I right mouse click over it, I'm going to get a different marking menu than I would if I were clicking over the mesh. So these are actually the controllers for a NURBS curve. So I'm going to select Control Vertex, grab this point here at the end, use my Move tool, and I'm going to take that and actually I'm going to pull it all the way down to here, and then I've got these other points here that I can grab and start pulling them out. So this is kind of the elbow area, and this is sort of the middle of the bicep. So again, I'm going to lower it down just because I've kind of lowered the overall arm down a little bit. And this one, I'm going to pull it back a little, and this one I'm going to bring right about here. Okay, so a few things I need to do to kind of clean this up. We can see a little bit of collapsing happening here where it's starting to flatten out this area. That's because this edge right here, if I right mouse click and go to edge, this edge actually needs to be rotated. So I'm just going to hit E on the keyboard and I'm going to just rotate it into position. So I want it to be kind of flowing in the direction that the elbow would go if we had an elbow that was kind of bent like that. Okay, and same thing down here. I'm just going to grab the edges right here also at the very end. Do the same thing. So I'm going to rotate these. I'm also going to scale it up, and I'm going to flatten it out like this, and again kind of rotate it just a little bit like that, and that's good. The rest of this is really what's going to end up being the hands on the character. Okay, this one here is also needing a little bit of rotation on it, and I feel like it needs to get scaled down a little. This one needs to get scaled up. He's got kind of a little bit bulkier arms here. I'm going to kind of push that up. This could actually get rotated a little bit too for more of the shoulder area, and I think I'm going to just exaggerate it here and make it a little bit smaller. Okay, so the arms are just kind of coming down and bending when we look at the side view. I want them to angle forward a little bit, kind of like he's in a little more of a relaxed pose. So I'm going to go back to this control vertex right here on the curve, and I'm going to pull this forward a little bit and kind of see what that does. Okay, so it's kind of, I don't want to pull it forward too much. I want to kind of angle that one out and push that one back a little. And then I'm going to go to the mesh again and select edge and do that. And I feel like that's pinching in just a little bit right there. So I'm going to widen it this way. I kind of like it in this direction here. Just push it down a little. Actually, he does have a little bit of curvature right there, so I'm going to grab that curvature. Okay. And so there, it's just angled a little bit forward so it doesn't look so kind of unrealistic. Our arms don't really, fold down that way, so he looks a little bit more relaxed now. And as far as kind of capturing some of the edge quality that's happening along here, the contour, I'm going to address that right now. First, just making this a little bit wider. I'm going to drop in an edge loop here on the arm. Right about here, and you can kind of see what it did there. It sort of popped over to the side. So I'm going to drag that back. Check it out here. And that looks pretty good. And then as far as the arms go here at the joint, we want to have some supporting edge loops so when it is rigged and it's moving around that this area doesn't collapse again. So I'm going to drop an edge loop on either side here. So one here and one here. And I don't really like what that did. It kind of rounded it out, so I'm actually going to undo that. I'm going to double click on the edge loop to pull up the tools, and I'm going to take off this insert with edge flow. I'm going to uncheck that, and I want to have just a little bit more control over where these are. Okay, so I've done that, and I'm going to hit Q to get out of that, E to rotate, and I'm going to just rotate these in a little bit just so they're kind of coming in more towards the front part of the arm, and I think I maybe took that one a little bit too far. And then maybe move this one out just a little bit. Okay, so this is kind of dipping in right here, which I do like, so I'm going to grab these and follow that curvature. Okay, and I should do that here as well. Push that in a little bit more, and right here as well. Okay, I'll come back and do just a little more shaping on this. I can do some little quick things right here. I can kind of pull the elbow out. I can kind of push this down here a little as well, just to kind of give it a little bit more shape instead of just something that looks like a tube or a rubber hose. Okay, and I feel like that's kind of looking a lot like the drawing. I don't have this sharp edge right here that I do on my drawing, so I can kind of maybe pull this area up here and kind of make a little bit of a shoulder like that. Okay, so let's kind of take a look at that, and I feel like this needs to come up a little higher now, and maybe these two. I'm going to turn, actually I'm going to go to edge slide here and kind of pull these out. Okay, and these down. Alright, so to finish up here, we're going to just draw in another loop around here, and we're going to do that with a multi-cut tool. I'm just going to turn edge slide off here. So the multi-cut tool is a way of drawing in edges that we want to have more control over. If I were to come in here and try to drop in an edge loop around here, it's either going to go around the body this way, or it's going to go vertically like this, and neither of those are going to work. So the only way to actually have something go around and shift directions, because we're going vertically up here, and then we want it to switch directions right here and then cut across and then around this side and then connect up down here. So we're going to use the multi-cut tool for that. I'm going to start right here on the back, and I'm just clicking, and you can click and hold. So actually the either backspace or delete will take that out. So I can click and drag on an edge there. It's going to kind of give me a percentage of where I am between the other two edges. So I'm placing it, roughly halfway between there. And then I'm just going to start kind of eyeballing it here, cutting across here. I'm making an intentional triangle right there. And then I'm going to come across here. And come around the bottom. So I'm making triangles at each of the turns here, or the corners. Okay, and then I'm connecting back up with the original and hitting enter to complete that. Okay, and the tool is still on right now, so I'm going to end that by hitting Q. And I feel like, I'm just going to turn edge slide on here again. I feel like I could have pulled these out just maybe a little bit more. I'm going to just go to vertex and slide that up a little more. Okay, and these edges are starting to just get a little close. There might be some pinching there. I'll come back and address that at a later date. And I'm just going to slide these down a little, just creating a little more room here for this loop. Okay, that looks all right. So this one right here, I'm probably going to start pulling it forward around the character. Okay, so the areas where we have the triangles, behind the triangles there's an n-gon in each one of these four corners here. So we're going to clean those up by selecting the two vertices here on the outside of the triangle and coming up here and using our merge vertices tool, and just click on that. So I'm just shift clicking the vertices and merging them, coming over here. So it takes out the triangle and it turns the n-gon into a four-sided polygon. Oops, I forgot to click that one. And merge. And there we go. So that looks pretty good. So that should deform nicely when the character is animating. I'm sort of setting this up for animation. I'm talking about animation workflows here, and we're definitely designing a character that can be animated. This could be rigged with this in the down position right here, but ideally, to make it a lot easier on the rigger, it's, you would usually want to have these arms coming straight out. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my character here, and what we're going to do is just cut it in half so we can copy this information over to the other side. So I'm going to go to faces and select this. So you want to make sure you definitely have symmetry off, otherwise it's going to select both and delete everything. I'm going to turn edge slide off, delete the character, and I'm just going to clean up this center line here. I want to make sure it's right on center. I'm going to drag a marquee down the center of the character here, grabbing all of these vertices. I'm going to hit R on the keyboard to bring up the scale tool, and I'm going to just drag this to the center. Nothing really to move here. Okay, it should be all right. Looks like it's on center. We'll definitely know here in a moment. A lot of times once you start modeling more in detail around the face, especially when we work with the mouth and we cut it in half and merge it over, we want to realign all of these vertices on this center edge here, the center line. I'm going to hit W on the keyboard. I'm going to hold down the X key, which is the snapping tool, snap to grid, and I'm just going to kind of pull it back and then snap it over here. Okay, and go back to object mode, and I'm going to shift right mouse click. It's going to give me a marking menu. I'm going to come down to mirror, and by default it's going to mirror over to the negative X side, which is what we want. We can also change it here in this dialog box. So if I wanted to switch the direction to positive or change the axis here, I could do that. I can also change the threshold. But everything looks pretty good here on this mirror, and I'm just going to hit Q to end that. Come back here and click on our object, and we've got our arms are done. So we'll come back in the next lesson and we'll model out the legs.